I've always been passionate and curious about animals. As a kid, when our vacations to the northern parts of Iran, where it's covered with trees and you can find all sorts of bugs and animals and everything, I would explore the woods and discover new creatures. That's what I spent my days. And I would bring them back on me or in my pockets, bug, frog, you name it, snail. And then I bring them to the house and, of course, immediately be asked to take them outside. When you truly love animals, they can sense that. And I think that's why stray dogs used to follow me down the street when I was a kid. That and the fact that I used to carry food for them in my pockets, half my breakfast maybe. I also always loved creating art. As a child, I was always had a project going on. I can't remember a time where creativity wasn't a part of my life. My creations weren't sophisticated. I was just making a mess. But later, I started learning techniques, some by tutors and some on my own. And my creations became more and more refined. I knew I wanted to become a professional artist ever since I was a kid. But younger people are often encouraged to pursue other careers and think of their art as something on the side, as a hobby. And that never sit well with me. I knew I wanted to be an artist. I think the turning point for me was when I entered the national competition for a toy design directed at professional designers. I didn't reveal my age. And to my surprise, as well as theirs, after they got to meet this 17-year-old kid, I won the second prize nationwide. And that was the encouragement I needed to pursue an art career, a design career. I studied industrial design in college and got my master's degree. And I think it gave me great foundation for a lot of things that I did later. I didn't become an industrial designer, but it helped me with a lot of other things. Then I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and studied fine arts, concentrating in majoring in ceramics and sculpture, and got my post-bac and graduated with highest honors. I think I found my voice and my style in those lovely studios, especially sculptures and ceramics. After that, at UNF, when I was studying there, I also found my freedom because it was a freedom that I never got to experience as a woman in Iran. And that was something new for me too. Then I moved here where my family had relocated while I was living in the US and studied my artworks. And I really enjoy being close to the mountains. And I love the scenery, it's gorgeous, and inspiration is everywhere. I was focused mostly on my sculptures for quite a few years, but I'll get back to that later. But 4 or 5 years ago, I started painting animals, and I found that I had just tapped into the center of my own Venn diagram, where animals and art overlap, my happy place. And paintings in this exhibition, there are some of my most recent ones. Each of the reference photos that I used spoke to me in some way or another, and I felt a strong connection to the subject. I research every animal that I paint, and I love learning new things about them, but sadly, some of those facts are really heartbreaking. Like this orangutan, this magnificent orangutan, or that tiger over there, they will no longer exist in the wild in the next short few decades, sorry. And this hyacinth macaw, the blue parrots over there, only a few populations of them are left in the wild. The white tiger is already extinct in the wild. There's no more wild tigers. What you see is in zoos, or you don't see them in the wild anymore. The main culprit for all of this is human activity. Loss of their habitat, hunting, pet trade, to name a few. Some of it might be because of lack of education, but most of this harm has been done purely for profit, which is really heartbreaking. At this rate of loss, the future generations will only get to see these animals in books, museums, movies, and maybe artworks. I started listening to audiobooks about animals while I was working on these paintings. I always listen to audiobooks when I work, nonfiction mostly, but listening to these titles about animals really opened my eyes. I realized how little I knew about these creatures that I've loved all my life. I have a full list of books that I put in on this coffee table. You're welcome to take with you. But some of the ones that really impressed me were The Inner Life of Animals by Peter Wallivan. Talks about love, grief, and compassion of animals, and it really had a huge impact on me. I listened to it more than once, actually. And another one was Beyond Words by Carl Safina, and he talks about how animals think and feel. Another one was Symphony with Animals by Dr. Aisha Akhtar, that love talks about the compassion of animals. All of these books had a huge impact on me and impacted my paintings as well. Listening to these audiobooks keeps me focused and grounded while I work. As you know, everything these days is designed to keep you distracted. Everything keeps pulling at you. And I find my moments of clarity when I'm creating something, when I design something, when I create a sculpture. My sculptures are rooted in my overactive imagination as a child. I used to make little creatures out of anything I could find around the house, and they were just hideous. But over time, they evolved into the sculptures that I make today. Studying industrial design has enabled me to actually bring those ideas to life. And after I do my sketches, I usually break down the form and into several components and try to decide what material to use as a core structure and how to build the final form on that base. This red flower, my favorite sculpture, Grace, is a mixed media sculpture. I cut these petals out of masonite board, these 9 petals, and then attached them at the base to a bowl-shaped styrofoam that I carved myself, and then that was the skeleton. Then I covered it with pieces of two-way stretched fabric, and then stitched them all over from all different directions and pulled them tight so the fabric was completely stretched out, no longer bouncing. And it created all these curves that you see here, all of this. And that was the skeleton. So on top of that, I added a layer of gesso and then reinforced it with paper mache. So the surface was really hard. I know it says don't touch, but I think I'm allowed. So it's really tough. And then after the surface was done, I added another layer of gesso and then the base painting and then the texture inside and then the final coat. What you see inside this pistil was created from stone clay, which is an air-dried clay. Each of these I created individually, sanded, painted, and then arranged them on a core with a dowel at the bottom. And that dowel goes inside a corresponding cavity inside the flower, and then the whole sculpture comes together. This actually is removable. You can take it out. Not all of my mixed media sculptures are created the same way. I use different techniques and materials based on what I'm creating. Sometimes I use wire mesh to create the form and then use plaster cloth, which is strips of cotton that you dip into freshly made batches of plaster and then apply them like bandages to the surface. And it creates a really tough surface, especially if you add several layers of it. I found some little pieces that I thought I would show you. This is the wire mesh that I told you about. When I want to create a big form, I usually do it roughly with a plier and then use smaller pliers to smooth out the curves and get the exact shape that I want. And these are some petals that I made as a part of a different sculpture. There's lots of them. These petals will be attached together and will look like a flower based on it for another sculpture. This is wire mesh inside and the plaster cloth on top. As you can see, it's really tough, but it has a texture which can be treated with acrylic mediums and paints, and it will look smooth like these. My ceramic sculptures are made of separate components, wheel-thrown components that have been altered and attached together. I work on them over a period of several weeks usually and cover them so they would dry very slowly. And after they're completely dry, I fire them, and after they're bisque fired, I seal the surface with gesso and treat the surface with acrylic mediums and paints. Both of these were created. These are bisque fired. The texture is actually with acrylic mediums. My sculptures take a long time to be created. I usually work on several of them at a time, and I have several of them in progress and alternate between them. Sometimes they take a different shape in the course of creation. Sometimes they're exactly like the one I had in mind, like my original idea. The main inspiration for my sculptures is nature. And what I find in nature, like the texture of bark in different trees, the flowers, seed pods. Like when I go on a hike, I look at the ground and there's inspiration everywhere. I pick up things and bring them home and look at them, study them, and take ideas from them. Nature offers limitless possibilities for my artworks, and it's more than I can ever explore in my lifetime. There is a deep connection between all of us and the natural world and animals. Some of us may be more aware of it than others, but it's in all of us. I hope that my artworks can be a reminder of this unique connection between us, nature, and the animals. I wanted to thank ASA for allowing me this opportunity to show my artworks here. It's a great honor. And I also want to thank my parents here, my mom and dad, who supported me all my life and let me destroy everything in their house in the name of art. Thank you.